Hello and welcome back to another episode of Handloader TV. I'm your host, Jeremiah. And in this episode, we have a wonderful 2011 before us here. This is a Watchtower Apache. Watchtower is a relatively new firearms company on the market here, and they're doing some pretty interesting and unique things. This firearm is chambered in none other than 9x19 or 9mm Luger, which really needs no introduction. Pretty much everybody out there is familiar with this cartridge, so I'm not going to bore you with the history and development of the 9mm Luger. However, I will talk in great detail about this firearm here because it's not only unique, interesting, but having already put some time behind the gun, so far I've been very impressed with it. And in full disclosure, Watchtower did send us this firearm for review. It's on loan from them. But I think this one I might have to purchase for myself because it was so enjoyable thus far. But without further delay, let's go ahead and take a look at the details on this particular handgun. With Watchtower Firearms being a relatively new company on the scene, we wanted to go ahead and put this thing through its paces prior to starting our load development. So we've already put a few hundred rounds through this particular handgun. I've kind of gotten a feel for it, so I know what I'm going to be talking about here as we discuss the details. For this video, we'll be testing the reliability, functionality, accuracy, and things of that nature with this handgun, since it's already passed its initial trials. So far, I've been relatively pleased and impressed with it. The overall weight of this particular handgun is 2.5 pounds, or 2 pounds 8 ounces, with the optic on there and the compensator and a magazine inserted into the gun, the 15-round magazine. So overall, very nice gun. One thing that is relatively unique to Watchtower Firearms is their proprietary PVD coating, which is a physical vapor disposition coating, and it really has a nice look to it. It gives the firearm not only a unique look, but it also adds a layer of functionality to it because this coating here is extremely slick. You can drop the slide on this guy and operate it with your pinky finger. I mean, it is so smooth. And it's hard to convey just how smooth this particular handgun is in the video because you can't get your hands and feel it for yourself. But I would highly encourage you guys, if you get the opportunity to handle one of these, definitely check it out because I can't explain to you without you feeling it for yourself how smooth the action is on this guy. And the trigger is another thing that I would describe as extremely smooth, crisp, and a very smooth and short reset as well. Zero creep, zero over travel on this guy. And on the average of 5 pulls on our Wheeler Engineering trigger pull gauge, this is the digital model we have here, the trigger broke clean and crisp at 2 pounds, 14.7 ounces. So overall, a very nice trigger. It is a 2011 style handgun, so it's basically a double stacked 1911. It does have an ambidextrous safety on it, which I do like. The grip safety as well, which brings us to the beaver tail here on the back of the firearm. It is fit very nicely on some 1911s, lesser quality 1911s are not as well built. You'll actually get some gaps here and you can actually feel it with your fingers and rub it through here. But this one feels super smooth, feels really nice in my hand. And overall, I've been very pleased with the feel of this. Sometimes 2011s can feel a little bit bulky too because it is a double stack magazine, double stack single feed in this case. And I don't really feel that at all. In fact, my wife shot this handgun as well, fit her hands fairly well, and she's definitely smaller than I am. So overall, the fit and feel is very good on this particular handgun. It ships with one 15-round magazine and one 20-round magazine. So very nice there. We have a compensator up front here to help reduce felt recoil. Works very well in testing, and the gun cycles extremely quick as well. Again, I think that's thanks to the coating. Featured in the barrel here, it is a 4.6-inch barrel, and the feed ramp is a Clark Para design. And to top it off, we have a Trijicon SRO, and included with the gun is multiple different plates to mount whatever optic your heart so desires. Trijicon, Holosun, things of that nature. So there you have it. There's pretty much the details on the gun. One other thing I want to note before we move on is it is a little bit shorter barrel. So This gun, as it sits here, is actually the same size with the compensator as a full-size government 5-inch barreled 1911. So that's kind of a neat little thing. And just for comparison and reference here, I have my carry gun, which is a Glock 19 MOS. And as you can see, it's pretty dang comparable in size without that compensator on there. But there you have it, the details of the Watchtower Apache. Now we're going to work up some hand loads for this particular gun and see how that performs and check it for accuracy and see what it's really capable of. So let's go ahead and walk you through what we did to develop hand loads in this firearm. So instead of showing you every load I work up with this press here and walk you through it step by step on exactly what we did to develop these loads, I figured instead I'd kind of just walk and talk you through it. So we started out by selecting our components, and that meant cases or brass. So we've selected Starline cases for all of our loads in this Apache handgun. They're high quality, uniform, and of outstanding quality. Then we have some high quality components here, powders, and then we have a Mighty Armory die set. So we went ahead and started out with new unfired Starline cases, which means I won't need this universal decapping die here, but I will need the sizing die. I went ahead and ran all the cases up through the Mighty Armory sizing die, which is a pretty interesting die actually, and I'm going to pop it out of the press and kind of show you the die because I think it's more interesting than watching me actually size cases with it. One thing I will note with these Mighty Armory sizing dies for 9mm, they do recommend that you use case lubricant. And so what I did is I sprayed a 50-50 mixture of lanolin and alcohol onto our Starline cases prior to running them up into the sizing die. So here's what you have in a Mighty Armory sizing die. You have the die body here, and then you have your decapping pin and expander rod there, if you will, or that slips down into the die like so. And then you have a very interesting little spring here that's kind of unique, and that slips down into the die as well to help with centering your case during the sizing operation. Then you have this cap here, which has a little button here sticking out so that it centers up on the spring. And then there's also an O-ring above these threads to lock it down. And how I like to reinstall this is I put my thumb on top and I kind of simply thread that guy back in till the threads catch, and then I screw it down till that O-ring makes contact. So a very interesting design on the sizing die. That's what we used to size all of our cases. And so far, so good. Everything worked very well and uniform and consistent, most importantly. So then from there, I went ahead and swapped over to their expanding die, ran my empty case up into the expanding die, flared the case mouth just a little bit. You can measure that if you want to make it repeatable. To be honest, I just put enough flare to where a bullet would seat into the case without shaving off any of the side or jacket material. From there, we went ahead and chamfered and deburred every case. And then we went ahead and primed them. I used a Frankfurt Arsenal hand primer to do that. And then it was time for powder. To dispense and weigh my powder, I used an RCBS Matchmaster, and all charges were accurate to 0.04 of a grain. Once all the cases were charged, we slipped on over to our Mighty Armory seating die, and we went ahead and seated all of our bullets. And then one thing that's kind of interesting and unique about this die is it does not have a built-in crimp function, but to me that's a little bit irrelevant. I went ahead and used a Lee factory crimp die. Mighty Armory does make a really nice crimping die, but for my purposes, the Lee factory crimp die is what I had on hand, so I went ahead and used that and crimped all of our cases. So that is exactly what we did to develop loads for this cartridge, so you guys can go ahead and duplicate that for yourself if so desired. Now, one thing I want to point out before we get any further is we're going to showcase you the best loads we work up with this handgun. And if you want to see all of the results, because we're going to test quite a few different bullets and quite a few different powders, more than what's just here on the bench. So if you want to see all those results, head on over to our sister website, loaddata.com, type in Handloader TV loads and look for the 9mm loads featuring this Watchtower Apache firearm. And you'll be able to see everything there, the group size, the velocities, all the important information except for the powder charge. We reserve that for our subscribers to the website, and it's a great way to not only grow your loading information and knowledge and database, but it also is a great way to support what we do here on the channel, independently testing load data and independently reviewing firearms. So check that out. And on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and take this gun. We'll hit the range, do some load development with it, and some accuracy testing. So we're out on the range now. We've got our Apache locked into the Ransom Master Series International Rest. I'm really excited to put it to the test. But first, we'll walk you through the setup. We fired about 20 rounds to settle the gun in the rest and just make sure that all the error is taken out and that it's printing a good group, which it is. It printed a 20 round sub 1-inch group just with some random hand loads I had laying around. So should be a good shooter. And we've got a Garmin Zero chronograph set up as directed to record all of our muzzle velocities. The target is downrange at 15 yards as usual. And according to the Kestrel 5700 here, the temperature is 98 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity is 17.5%. And pressure is 30.43 when adjusted for elevation, which is 5,000 feet. We've got a slight breeze blowing from about the 6 o'clock-ish to 4 o'clock position at about 3 to 5 miles per hour. So really nice day, pretty hot, but we'll go ahead and put this guy to the test and see how it does. We're going to start out with our hand loads and then we'll move on over to testing some factory loads as well. Let's get started. This load is using Shooter's World Clean Shot powder, a 4.6 grain charge with 115 grain Federal Syntech bullets, Starline cases, CCI 500 primers. Our overall loaded length is 1.125 inches. If I rattled that off too quick, fear not, there will be a target review with the load data on the screen towards the end of the video, so keep a lookout for that. But for now, let's shoot them and group them. Go ahead and zero our protractor here for our recoil angular measurement. We've gone ahead and swapped over to Alliant Power pistol powder, a 5.6 grain charge with 124 grain Spear Gold Dot hollow point bullets, Starline cases, CCI 500 primers, and our overall loaded length is 1.125 inches. Let's see how this gun likes a little bit heavier stuff. Slide lock back on the starting load, no issues there. Decent velocity. For this load, we're using Shooter's World Major pistol powder, a 6.9 grain charge with 124 grain Hornady XTP, Starline cases, CCI 500 primers, and our overall loaded length is 1.115 inches. Shoot them and group them. 5 rounds, very light recoil, and the slide lock to the rear with a start load. That's a theme I'm seeing with this gun. It just runs super smooth, even with the start charges, which is something to really consider with these more match style handguns. Next up, we have accurate number 7, a 5.8 grain charge with 147 grain spare total metal jacket through TMJ, CCI 500 primers, Starline cases, and our overall loaded length is 1.130 inches. Let's go ahead and shoot a group. This is one of my personal favorite powders in the 9mm. There's our 5 shots. So now we're going to go ahead and swap over to some factory loaded ammunition. This is Federal Personal Defense. They're punched jacketed hollow point, 124 grains in weight. Go ahead and load this guy up. Drop the slide like we've been doing here. Make sure our protractor here is on and zeroed. And let's go ahead and put a group on the paper. Five rounds. So we've got the 9mm Watchtower Apache here, some steel plates. Let's get a feel for it, see how it does at speed on the tree, and then we'll progressively try and shoot faster as we move along here. But let's see how it does for now. So failed to lock back the slide on that for some reason, but boy oh boy, it feels really nice, really smooth. Couple of misses in there, but that's on me, not the gun, especially at this distance, 15 yards. It's really tempting to run the gun fast on this. Let's see how quick we can do some double taps on that dirty steel next to it. Yeah, that's a nice gun. Slide lock back there. Towards the end of our testing, I did notice that this magazine was getting a little bit tired. I'm not sure how many other people have tested this gun before me. It is a loaner gun from Watchtower Firearms, and that very well could be the reason why the slide failed to lock back with this magazine. It could just be getting a little bit tired. But the second magazine, the less fun magazine, it locked back just fine. So there you have it. Overall, this gun feels really good. Wouldn't hesitate to run competitions with it. So we're back at the bench now after a couple of days of testing hand loads and shooting this handgun, and we've got a few different loads that we want to showcase for you. 4 different hand loads and 1 factory load as well. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Taking a look at the first load that we put to the test here, this is using Shooter's World Clean Shot powder, a 4.6 grain charge with a 115 grain Federal Syntech bullet. Standard deviation was 8, extreme spread was 22 feet per second, and the average velocity was 1,054 feet per second. This measured out to a .99 inch group with this particular load, and this being the first bullet and powder combination that we tried, I was pretty happy with that, and I thought it would be neat to go ahead and include it in this target review section. Then we went ahead and swapped on over to Alliant Power Pistol Powder, a 5.6 grain charge. We got an average velocity of 1,133 feet per second, standard deviation of 10, extreme spread of 28, and this load grouped into 0.69 inches. So all in all, I'm very happy with that. And in testing this particular handgun, it seemed to really like the 124 grain projectiles most compared to 115 grain and 147 grain projectiles. So keeping that in mind, the next load that we have to showcase is using Shooter's World Major Pistol Powder, a personal favorite of mine in the 9mm Luger. And I think it closely represents or duplicates accurate number 7. We have a 124 grain Hornady XTP bullet, and we got very respectable standard deviations and extreme spreads here. And the group size measured out to 0.52 inches, so right around ½ an inch with that particular load. There might be a little bit of luck involved in that, especially since it's just a 5-shot group. But all in all, I'm very pleased with that, and across the board, Shooter's World Major Pistol Powder was a proven performer. Then next, we went ahead and put to the test accurate number 7 powder with a 147 grain Spear Total Metal Jacket bullet, average velocity of 968 feet per second, standard deviation of 8.7, and a group size of just 0.69 inches. So if nothing else, with a good load, it does seem like this handgun is capable of shooting in the 3/4 of an inch mark at 15 yards. So nothing to sneeze at there. Very pleased with those results. Then we went ahead and swapped on over to factory loaded ammunition. This is from Federal. This is their Federal Punch Personal Defense with 135 grain Hydroshock Deep. Very interesting bullet there. I'm hoping they'll make that available as a component bullet at some point in the near future. But excellent performer there, especially for self-defense. We got an extreme spread of 45, standard deviation of 14, and that group measured out to right around 1.06 inches, give or take a little bit there. But all in all, very good performance from this Watchtower Apache. And to be honest, with the price point and what you're getting, you kind of expect that good of performance. But we'll talk about that more a little bit later on. I want to leave you with some final closing thoughts on the handgun and some other things that we experienced during testing. So let's go ahead and cover that next. So the first thing that I'd like to mention here about this particular handgun is while we were testing it, we did experience one, I guess you could say, malfunction. It was rather interesting. I have not experienced it before, but it was essentially a double feed without actually jamming up the gun. So we actually have some footage that we can roll in here while we were testing it in the ransom rest. We had 5 rounds in the magazine, and one of those rounds, while the handgun was cycling, it actually ejected the spent case, fed a new live round out of the top of the gun, and sent a live round flying, ejected it from the gun, while still actually loading another round into the chamber and being able to continue to fire without any kind of stoppage. So it was a very interesting malfunction, and the only thing I can attribute it to is the magazines. I think these magazines were a little bit worn out. They definitely felt like that. And I don't know how many people Watchtower Firearms sent this handgun out. It might have been in 3 or 4 different writers or reviewers before I got to it. And it very easily could have been a magazine malfunction. And it was actually only with one of the magazines we received. The other one worked perfectly fine. So I found that rather interesting as well. It's not something I'm horribly worried about. I don't think it had anything to do with the gun, but I did want to mention that and showcase that footage there for you so you could see it for yourself. I thought it was a rather interesting malfunction, even though it technically didn't stop the gun from cycling or working or firing the next round. You simply lost a live round from your magazine. So interesting there. Now, on another note that I want to address with this particular handgun is accuracy. There have been several other reviews online and people talking about this gun. And to be honest with you, in checking their accuracy reports, I wasn't overly impressed with it. But the ransom rest doesn't lie. And this particular gun we have here seemed to work really, really well. And accuracy, in my opinion, was very good. Definitely on par with this type of handgun, a 2011 style platform. We got some groups that were, between ½ inch and 3/4 of an inch. So very pleased with that. It's definitely repeatable because it happened multiple times with multiple different loads. So all in all, I think either this particular gun is extremely accurate and the other ones weren't, or perhaps there's a fluke with this one and it's just super accurate. I'm not sure. Maybe the other reviewers didn't have a ransom rest and that's why you couldn't get that kind of accuracy. That would certainly make sense. But at any rate, this gun that we tested is certainly very, very accurate. And last but not least, one of the things that I'd like to mention about this Watchtower is how smooth and fast it operates. That slide cycling is extremely quick, and it allows for very rapid follow-up shots. And with the comp on there, very flat shooting, very light recoil. You can do double taps and it sounds like one shot with this handgun. It is extremely fast, which would make it an ideal handgun for competition use, and really that's what it's bred and designed for. But on the other hand, it would be an excellent self-defense handgun. Just make sure your magazines are in good shape, which that doesn't just apply to this handgun, it applies to all handguns. I've even had Glock magazine springs wear out over the years, so just something you've got to maintain. But all in all, I'm very pleased with the performance of the gun. I thought it handled very well, and I'm glad this gun gets a thumbs up from me. I've really enjoyed shooting it. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed watching this video. We hope if you do, you'll give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you're notified when we post our next video. And as always, if you guys have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those in the comments section below. I still read every single one of those comments, but as time goes on and we get more comments than I can handle, I can't take the time to reply directly to every one of them. But I still do my best to get in there and to reply to as many of them as possible. So thank you so much, and I will catch you in the next episode.